Welcome to my presentation, Holistic Vision Correction, a neurodevelopmental approach to seeing better. Let's get started. Some chapters and topics we will go over will be the anatomy of the eye, iridology, some helpful foods, neuroplasticity and the idea of neuroplasticity, exercises you can do for the eyes, common eye pathologies, and some books and resources. Here is the basic anatomy of the eyes. You should pause the video now to learn these muscles. Here's more eye anatomy, but it's going into the brain now. You have the optic nerve in the front on top, coming from the eyeball and going into the optic chiasm and going all the way back into the primary visual cortex, the occipital lobe in the back of the brain, which is where our vision comes from. You can also pause the video to learn these better too. Here are a few diagrams of the brain showing where our vision comes from, the part of the brain that we use to see. And there's the striate cortex in the top left. In the top right, it's known as the primary visual cortex. In the bottom left, it's known as the primary visual or the striate cortex. And in the bottom right, it's the primary visual cortex. So it's the occipital lobe in the back of the brain that is the part of the brain that sees, and it connects into the eye through the optic nerves. Here is one more diagram showing the brain, the occipital lobe, the central part of the visual field in the top left and right there. And then number 2 says is represented at the rear of the brain, so it's in the occipital lobe, which is where our vision comes from. That's what processes our vision. And number 3, the peripheral parts of the visual field are represented at a more anterior location. And number 4, the upper part of the visual field is represented in the most ventral portion of the occipital lobe, so a little bit lower. But the occipital lobe is what controls our vision and is probably the part of the brain that we need the most healing work done. Here's a slide showing another image going from the occipital lobe to the eye. It says the image captured by each eye is transmitted to the brain by the optic nerve. This nerve terminates on the cells of the lateral geniculate nucleus, the first relay on the brain's visual pathways. The cells of the lateral geniculate nucleus then project to their main target, the primary visual cortex, which is the occipital lobe. It is in the primary visual cortex that the brain begins to reconstitute the image from the receptive fields of the cells of the retina. So basically, your eye picks up light and whatever it's seeing, and then that image goes through the optic nerve to the occipital lobe, and the occipital lobe reconstitutes the image and it processes it pretty much. So this proves that our occipital lobe is an area of attention that we need to look at for vision correction. So here's just another image of the map of our visual brain. So you see the eyes in the front, the retina. It's going to the optic nerve. You're seeing light outside because everything's made from light from the sun. So that image is being processed into your retina, and then it's going into your optic nerve and going to the visual area of the thalamus in the brain, and then it goes back into the back of the brain in the visual cortex, the occipital lobe. And I'm not saying only focus on the occipital lobe, because obviously there's a visual area in the thalamus and the optic nerve runs through the brain. But maybe the occipital lobe, if there's a neck injury or something to that effect, this would affect the blood flow to the occipital lobe area and to the visual centers in the brain. So we need to look out for that. We need to correct injuries in order to correct, to have vision correction. And we need to probably meditate on these visual areas in the brain. Now we're moving on into iridology, also known as iridodiagnosis or iridiagnosis. It's an alternative medicine diagnosis by examination of the irises of the eyes. So below you can see an iridology chart. And if you look closely, it's kind of blurry in this slide, but if you look closely, you can see the description of each organ in the body in the eyes. And this is actually a good way to diagnose certain disease patterns or certain toxification patterns in the body. And you can see just by looking at someone's eyes where a disease might be coming from. Here's iridology continued, and you can see another iridology chart. And this one you can see a little better. If you look in the middle of the picture, you see lung, upper, middle, and lower, and then you can see breast, and then going up you can see the ear. So you can actually figure out what's going on with someone inside of their body just by looking at their eyes if you know what to look for. And that's iridology. Here's the last iridology slide that I have. You can see it a lot better now. You can see all the organs in the body are associated with certain parts of the eye, and you can actually make a diagnosis of someone's ailment or disease or pathology just by looking at their eye. Here's some iridology notes. So to start with, our eyes can change color. If you have a all organic vegan diet and you're eating a lot of fruits and vegetables and you're detoxifying your digestive system a lot, your eyes can change color depending on the person. Our eyes reflect the health of the internal organs. So when your organs are sick or if they're very toxic, that will show up in your eyes. Fruits help detoxify the organs in the eyes, and just detoxification in general helps. Once again, your eyes can change color. So if you eat good foods such as figs or watermelons or just other fruits, it'll actually eventually detoxify your system and your eyes could change color. Here we have some helpful eye foods. First on the list is euphrasia, also known as eyebright. It's good for clearing up cataracts and helping to prevent blindness, and it also helps you see better. Next we have lutein, which is an amino acid that helps build the macula. Third we have carrots, which have a phytonutrient in them called falcarinol, additional to vitamin A, which everyone knows. But falcarinol is actually something that helps prevent funguses. Then we have figs, which have vitamin A, E, and K. Next we have kiwis and Swiss chars, which are good with high in zeaxanthin, and they help build the macula of the eye. Here we have a phenomenon known as neuroplasticity. The definition of neuroplasticity is the ability of the brain to form and reorganize synaptic connections, especially in response to learning or experience or following an injury. So basically, when you have brain damage, what happens is your brain will actually use neuroplasticity to rebuild itself and reorganize itself and create new motor neurons so that you don't have brain damage anymore. In his book, The Brain That Changes Itself, Norman Doidge explains that the brain can rewire itself by creating new neural networks. Brain damage, such as vision loss, visual impairment, memory problems, cognitive decline, can all be healed and prevented. So this is the concept known as neuroplasticity. Many people nowadays might think that when you get brain damage, it's not healable, you can't correct it, there's nothing you can do about it. But the contrary seems to be true, is that we have a phenomenon known as neuroplasticity, where the brain actually rewires itself and heals itself back to normal. The next thing we have is neuroplasticity, or the ability of the brain to reorganize itself, both in structure and how it functions. There are some terms below: neurogenesis, new synapses, strengthened synapses, and weakened synapses. So in neurogenesis, continuous generation of new neurons in certain brain regions. So basically, people with visual impairment or vision loss, they probably need continuous generation or neurogenesis in the occipital lobe, because that's the area of the brain that controls vision. New skills, new synapses, new skills and experiences create new neural connections. So when neurogenesis happens in our occipital lobe, and we're going to have new synapses, and so we're going to need new skills and experiences. So for example, if you walk outside and you look around and you notice that your vision isn't as good as it should be, but you're doing, let's say, eye exercises and your vision starts to get better, these new experiences are creating new neural connections. Strengthened synapses. Repetition and practice strengthens neural connections. So when you're walking outside, walking around, and your vision is starting to get better, this is actually going to strengthen those neural synapses, and the repetition and practice of that strengthens those connections, and it helps you see better. Weakened synapses, connections in the brain that aren't used, become weak. So basically, if you don't use it, you lose it. If you never walk around outside, if you never get outside, if you're always behind the TV, always behind the computer, always inside where it's not as bright, your vision will probably start going, and you need to get outside more, and you need to start walking around, getting some new neural synapses going, getting some new connections made, and hopefully, with any luck, you'll start seeing better. So now we have the law of facilitation, also known as Hebb's law. Hebb's law says that when an impulse passes once through a given set of neurons to the exclusion of others, it will tend to do so again, and each time it does, the resistance will be lower. Let's say that again, but sum it up. Hebb's law says that when an impulse passes once through a given set of neurons, it will tend to do so on a future occasion. So what does that mean? For example, when you do eye exercises, you're doing isolation exercises for the eyes, and you're training them to focus and to see better. But you need to integrate them with movement. So when you get up and walk around, you go outside, get some sunlight, when you go to the grocery store, drive your car, etc., you're actually integrating those eye exercises with your breathing and with your movement, and you're building new neural networks in your brain pathways and in your body. You're integrating your eyes to see better while you walk. You're integrating your eyes to see better while you go to the store, while you go out and drive your car, etc. And this all has to deal with the law of facilitation, because you're creating new neural networks within your body, and your body is forgetting the old pathways that didn't work so well, and it's picking up the new pathways. Here's more on Hebb's law. This is 2 rules that you can follow. Number 1 says if 2 neurons on either side of a connection are activated synchronously or at the same time, then the weight of that connection is increased. And number 2 says if 2 neurons on either side of a connection are activated asynchronously or not at the same time, then the weight of that connection is decreased. Hebb's law provides the basis for learning without a teacher, or otherwise being self-sufficient. Learning here is a local phenomenon occurring without feedback from the environment. So let's go to number one. If two neurons fire at the same time, then the weight of that connection is increased. When you wear glasses and you go out and do strenuous activity, your brain and your nervous system is heavily firing neurons, and whether they're synchronously fired or asynchronously fired, there's still going to be some weight there. So if you do strenuous activity with your glasses, then you increase bad vision. If you do strenuous activity without your glasses, then you're more likely to correct your vision and integrate a correct vision with you doing strenuous activity. So you have to be careful and sometimes train yourself not to use the glasses. There are some exceptions here, such as like when you're driving, you have to be very careful. When you're operating machinery, you have to be very careful. But when you're outside playing with the kids, when you're taking a walk, when you're at the grocery store doing stress-free activities, sometimes you can take your glasses off and train your vision to correct itself and actually be self-sustaining. So here's the law of facilitation in context. Hebb's law was proposed by Freud in 1888, and he said that neurons that fire together wire together. So if you're doing strenuous activity with your glasses off, you're more likely to wire together the good neurons that are going to help you see better. But if you do strenuous activity wearing your glasses, you're more likely going to wire together the bad neurons that are going to impair your vision. When two neurons fire simultaneously, this firing facilitates their ongoing association. So once again, if you have the good neurons that are helping you see better with your vision correction training firing at the same time, it's going to facilitate their ongoing association with each other, so you're going to end up seeing better. When nerves are placed in a growth culture, they grow at most a millimeter a day. So nerves can grow fast, and if you train the good nerves, you'll grow some good neural connections and rewire your brain. But if you're put into a situation where you can't train your body to see better, then you're going to end up probably getting a visual impairment or some other brain injury. The visual cortex could begin processing the other senses quickly only if connection to those sources already exist. So the visual cortex is what controls your vision, and it can only help you see better if connections exist. So basically, if you don't work at this, you won't see better. You have to build new connections. It's like a working out or an exercise, but for your eyes and your brain. You have to build new neural networks, and you have to integrate them with your breathing. You have to integrate them with your moving and your lifestyle, and etc. Otherwise, it just won't happen. So the visual cortex is the processing center for our eyes and our vision, and we need to build stronger, more self-sustaining connections in that area, in the occipital lobe. Here is a picture borrowed from the book Nutrition and Physical Degeneration by Weston A. Price. I'm not going to go too much into detail about the book, but he proved basically that when you live on the land, it's better for our dentition and our vision, whereas when you eat processed food, which kind of destroys our health. So here's a picture of a caveman, and it says, "He saw stars. You need a telescope to see." The primitives did not need glasses. Their eyes were so good. Like the animals, they knew what foods to select. So the primitives can see the moons around a planet without the use of a telescope, and this was verified by a scientist standing nearby with a telescope. So this caveman here was able to see the moons around the planet without using glasses or a telescope because his eyes were so good and his brain was obviously developed. And they were able to verify that by actually having a scientist stand nearby and look at the moons that he was pointing out. Here are common eye pathologies: glaucoma, astigmatism, cataracts, grave disease, and nearsightedness. Glaucoma, a condition of increased pressure within the eyeball, causing gradual loss of vision. And as you can see, buildup of the aqueous humor fluid at the front of the eye, and damage to the optic nerve, which is not good. Probably from a processed food diet, not enough eye bright, being inside too much, etc. What are the causes of glaucoma? Too high levels of eye pressure, poor blood flow, and optic nerve damage. Poor blood flow can happen from neck injuries or shoulder injuries or upper back injuries, because when you're injured in those areas, instead of having blood flow go to your brain, it will more likely go to the injured area of the shoulder or the back, so you have a poor blood flow to your eyes. And optic nerve damage could be from food additives and exposure to chemicals that are harmful to you. Here is astigmatism, and what is it? Astigmatism is the defect in the eye or in the lens caused by a deviation from spherical curvature, which results in distorted images as light rays are prevented from meeting at a common focus. So when the light enters your eye isn't in the normal spherical curvature that it's supposed to be, so the light gets kind of distorted, and it causes an astigmatism, and it makes it hard to focus. What are the causes of astigmatism? Astigmatism occurs when your cornea or lens is curved more steeply in one direction than in another. It often occurs with nearsightedness or farsightedness. It may be present at birth, so it could be a birth injury. It can be the result of an injury to the eye from some other type of injury, maybe a sports injury or something. And it can also be scarring or thinning of your cornea. Here's a picture of an astigmatic eye compared with a normal eye. The normal eye is above, and as you can see, when the light enters the eye, it focuses the image to a single point. And when the light enters an astigmatic eye below it, the light goes into the eye, but it creates several points, which creates a blurred image. Please pause this slide so you can study this. Next, we have cataracts. A cataract is a clouding of the eye's natural lens, which lies behind the iris and the pupil. Cataracts are the most common cause of vision loss in people over age 40 and is the principal cause of blindness in the world. So here you have a picture of a normal eye on the left and an eye with a cataract on the right. And as you can see, the normal eye, the light goes through the eye and creates the single image that it's supposed to. In a clouded cataract eye, there's a cloud in the lens, and when the light goes through the eye, it creates several images and blurs everything. What are some causes of cataracts? One of the main causes is smoking, so avoid smoking. Significant alcohol consumption can also cause cataracts. hormone replacement therapy. So if your hormone system goes out of balance, statin medicines used to lower cholesterol. Remember that cholesterol is a precursor to every steroid hormone in the body, and you need cholesterol. Obesity and hypertension can also cause cataracts. And might we also add that you need to have an organic diet and you need to eat appropriately. Otherwise, if you do recreational smoking or recreational drinking, your body won't have the ability to fight off the free radicals that are created from these activities, so you'll have an increased chance of brain damage or causing cataracts. So you need to have a good diet as well. So here we have Graves' disease, also known as Graves' ophthalmopathy. About 30% of people with Graves' disease show some signs and symptoms of a condition known as Graves' ophthalmopathy. In Graves' ophthalmopathy, inflammation and other immune system events affect muscles and other tissues around your eyes. The resulting signs and symptoms may include bulging eyes, which is one of the most common symptoms, a gritty sensation in the eyes, pressure or pain in the eyes, which is given considering the bulging eyes, puffy or retracted eyelids, reddened or inflamed eyes, light sensitivity, also known as photophobia, double vision, and vision loss. Now we have Graves' disease common symptoms. Common symptoms of Graves' disease are bulging eyes, fatigue, enlargement of your thyroid gland, also known as a goiter, anxiety and irritability, a fine tremor of your hands or fingers, heat sensitivity and an increase in perspiration or warm, moist skin, weight loss despite normal eating habits, change in menstrual cycles, erectile dysfunction or reduced libido, frequent bowel movements, thick red skin, usually on the shins or tops of the feet, and a rapid or irregular heartbeat. And the interesting thing to note here is that most of these are hormonal issues. Moving on, now we have myopia. So here's a picture of an eyeball with myopia compared with an eyeball with normal vision. So as you can see, the eyeball with normal vision, the light enters the eye and the light goes to the back of the eye, whereas with myopia, a nearsighted eye, the eyeball is too long and the light doesn't reach all the way to the back of the eye, so the image becomes blurry and the object appears blurry. What causes myopia? Myopia occurs when the eyeball is too long relative to the focusing power of the cornea and the lens of the eye. So the light that enters the eye is unable to get to the back of the eye and the image becomes blurry. The cornea and or lens being too curved for the length of the eyeball. Weak eye muscles can cause it. Nerve damage, such as optic nerve damage. Poor dieting factors, poor lifestyle factors, poor posture and poor blood flow, too much computer television, not enough outdoors, and dependence on glasses. Once again, when you're dependent on glasses and you go out and do strenuous activity, you're actually strengthening those bad pathways and becoming even more dependent on glasses. Whereas if you take the glasses off while doing activity, you're building new good pathways that could help you with the self-sustaining aspect of vision correction. Healing myopia. Here are some things we can do to help correct and heal from our myopia. Do eye exercises and do eye focus techniques. These will help focus your eye and help to train your eye to become more independent. Train the eyes and change your diet and lifestyle. So training the eyes with eye focus techniques and changing our diet to eating organic whenever possible and choosing a calmer lifestyle. Once again, your eyes need to be able to relax in order to focus properly. Correct the posture. This increases blood flow to the brain. Once again, if you have back or shoulder injuries, the blood flow is more likely to go to those injury sites than to your eyes. Take your glasses off to rewire your brain. This makes you independent of your glasses. When you take your glasses off, it helps you rewire your brain for success. And get outside more often so that you integrate your vision with your movement and your breathing, etc. So who helped pioneer natural vision correction? Probably Dr. William Bates. So here's some information on him. Dr. William Bates, an eminent eye surgeon, was dissatisfied with glasses as the standard cure for visual discomfort. He was well aware that glasses did no more than alleviate the symptoms of the problem. They did not address the cause. After many years of research into vision, Bates came to the conclusion that a tremendous proportion of eyesight deterioration is caused by strain, physical, mental, or emotional, from an incorrect lifestyle, leading to ocular dysfunction, blurriness, double vision, light sensitivity, and other symptoms. After studying the function of the eyes with perfect sight, Bates developed and taught his patients a series of activities to relax and exercise the eyes and visual brain back to maximum visual potential. The techniques spread, and people all over the world have improved and often perfected their vision by his method. Bates's book, Better Eyesight Without Glasses, is sold widely today, and we'll go into some of those eye exercises now. So here's the beginning of our eye exercises. This is the figure 8. And as you can see by the little green arrow, it's going up to the left, back down around, and then up to the right and back down around to the center, and then going back around again to make a figure 8. When you're doing this exercise, it's important to have the correct breathing pattern to integrate with your eyes. So when you're going up to the left, you breathe in diaphragmatically, and then when you go down, you breathe out. And then when you go up to the right, you breathe in diaphragmatically, and then when you go down, you breathe out. And you can do this as much as you want to, probably 10 to 20 times for an exercise, and it should help you with vision correction. Here's an astigmatism removal wheel with left and right and up and down and diagonal actions. Please pause the video now so you can study it. Here is the astigmatism removal wheel without any text. Here is the eye focus exercise. For this exercise, you hold your thumb or an object out in front of you, such as a pencil, and what you want to do is slowly move it away from you and then slowly bring it back. So when you hold your thumb out in front of you, or a pencil, you keep the memory of the details of your thumb as you move it away from you, and you try to keep that image as it's slowly moving away from you if you're nearsighted and you can't see it as it moves away. And then once it comes back, you'll try to memorize that image again as it moves away from you. Here is focus continued. So step-by-step process for focusing is hold a pencil at an arm's length and focus on it. Slowly bring it closer to your nose. Move it farther from your vision until you can no longer keep it in focus, and repeat about 10 times a day. And once again, you want to remember the details on the pencil as it is moving away from you to where you can no longer keep it in focus, because this will help train your eyes to focus on those small details and hopefully make your vision a lot better. Next we have the Zhdanov method, borrowed from a Russian guy, based on the developments of William Bates, generalizing and combining in his own already known exercises in the complex. The Russian physicist V.P. Zhdanov began to propagate this alternative method of healing and returning lost visual functions. So the image below shows some of his exercises that he did to help correct his vision. Here are some of the exercises from the Zhdanov method. As you can see, with number 5, you go up and then diagonally down and over to the right, and then up and then diagonally down over to the left. There's another figure 8 there. Number 4, you have a square, and so on and so forth. So feel free to pause the video to learn these methods. Here's more from the Zhdanov method. You have a square, you have up and down, you have some circles, there's one going clockwise and another one going counterclockwise, and then you have some semicircles, figure 8s on the bottom left. So once again, feel free to pause the video now to write these down or study them. Here are some directions of movement that you can do for eye exercises. So at the top you have looking up, and then below that you have looking to the diagonals, and so on and so forth. And those are the directions of movement, and you can pause the video again if you need to write these down or study them. And to conclude, here are some important notes to consider. Your eyes must be relaxed to focus properly. So if your eyes aren't relaxed, it's going to be harder for you to focus them properly, and it's going to be harder for you to attain natural vision correction. So you need to find a way to relax your body, relax your eyes, and relax your mind. Your occipital lobe controls vision. Your occipital lobe is in the back of your brain, and that's the control center of your vision. So it might be good for you to put focus there during meditations or while you're walking, to put more focus into your occipital lobe area. Next is nerves that fire together wire together, and this goes for good and bad neural pathways. So if you already have bad neural pathways, those nerves are going to fire together and they're going to wire together and actually strengthen a bad neural pathway. For an example, when you're doing a workout or a strenuous activity and you're wearing your glasses, you're going to strain those bad neural pathways and strengthen them. Whereas if you take your glasses off while you're doing strenuous activity during a workout, you're going to strengthen the good neural pathways. Next, the brain can rewire itself. The brain does rewire itself and heal from damage. People might tell you that if you have permanent brain damage that the brain can't heal, but it's just not true. The brain does heal from brain damage and it rewires itself. Next is wearing glasses creates dependency on glasses. This is true because when you always wear glasses, you don't give yourself a chance to build good neural pathways, and you strengthen the bad neural pathways, thus becoming dependent on having to wear glasses. This next is because glasses don't train vision to correct itself. Glasses just help you see better, but it doesn't train you to become self-reliant on your occipital lobe and on your brain and your eyes. Glasses just help you see better. They don't actually train the vision to focus and to see better. And finally, memory of a place or an object helps with vision correction. So when you're doing, for example, the focus exercise with your thumb or holding a pencil in front of you, you hold the memory of the details on your thumb as you move it away from you, and you try to keep that memory as it moves further away from you. But you'll find yourself trying to focus at the same time on those details of the pencil or your thumb as you bring it away from you and bring it back to you. So these are the important notes that we have concluded, and thank you for watching this presentation.